Hello and welcome to the Empathy Podcast. My name's Leanne Butterworth. I'm so glad you're here with me today as we talk about empathy in the professional athlete with multi-Olympic medal winner, multi-world record holder and world championship winner, swimmer, Libby Trickett. I'm so honoured that she has joined me today. We're talking about mental health, expectations, and the value of family and friends in what it takes to become a professional athlete at the absolute top of your field. I'm so honoured Libby joined me today. I hope you enjoy this discussion. This is the Empathy Podcast, and I'm Leanne Butterworth. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Empathy Podcast. My name's Leanne Butterworth. I'm so excited today. I'm talking to the beautiful, talented, amazing Libby Trickett, and today we're talking about empathy and the professional athlete. So, hello, Libby. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
I've been really looking forward to this one. So
Have
I have.
Thank you.
So, Libby, everybody knows who you are, but can you please tell me who you are, what you do, and why I'm talking to you about empathy and the professional athlete?
So, a million years ago in another life, I was an elite athlete. I swam for Australia for the better part of a decade. The stats are I went to 3 Olympic Games, 4 World Championships, and 1 Commonwealth Games, and won a few medals, and had the privilege of, I guess, representing my country and getting to do something that I was incredibly passionate about and loved for many years, which is something I'm very grateful for.
Yeah. So, how many medals did you win?
At the Olympics, I won 7. So 4 gold, 1 silver, 2 bronze.
Wow.
And the world champs, I won 8 gold.
Wow.
Across 4 world champs. So very, I don't know. It's so funny to kind of talk about now because it's such a long it feels like such a long time ago, and it almost feels like a different person who did that, but it's so much part of who I am, and it's part of what has made me the person that I am today. And so it's kind of it's weird. I can't believe I train for 35 hours a week in the water. The better part of a decade.
Wow. So today's conversation, we're talking about empathy and the professional athlete, and there are a couple of aspects that we're going to talk about. So one is empathy from the public for professional athletes. So we're going to get into a little bit about what that's like. Empathy and mental health within a professional athlete, and then empathy within teammates. So you were a swimmer, and your last Olympics was 2012?
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
So the London Olympics.
Correct.
So let's talk a bit about what it's actually like to be a professional athlete, because I mean, I go to the gym twice a week. I play casual volleyball and I'm sore.
Professional athlete.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
What's it like to be a professional athlete in that space?
I loved it. I mean, like I said, I was so passionate about it. I feel so grateful that I had the opportunity to do something that I loved and was good at. And I worked really hard at it. I don't know, it's hard to explain. Because, when you try and explain to people that we're swimming up and down a black line for up to 4 hours a day, that sounds completely crazy, but I don't know, I just had this passion and this drive to achieve something, and I had a path to go on to do that, to be able to achieve an Australian team, to be able to achieve, a world championship gold medal, or, a personal best time, or a world record, or an Olympic gold medal. I had a clear path, and the idea of being able to train my body and use it to perform in a certain way, I just loved I loved that. I loved it so much. And it's still one of the things that I miss a lot about swimming, I think, is to be able to set a goal, have a really clear steps to take to try and achieve
Mm.
that goal. Because the real world, that doesn't happen. Like, you can kind of set a goal, but it feels like you're going on in a tornado or something trying to get to this particular goal. But and you can go in 1,000 different ways. Whereas,
Yeah.
with sport, in professional sport, you have to do hard work. You have to train your body, train your mind, and be there on the starting blocks.
So where did that pressure come? Like, do you put pressure on yourself? Like, did it ever become a negative pressure, or was it always a positive of driving towards a goal? Like, where did the sense of pressure come from? Was it external? Did you have people around you, or was it for you purely internal?
Uh, you have to say there's a mixture of both, particularly in a sport like swimming, which is very public. Every 4 years, everybody's watching the swimming to see how we go. We have a very proud and long tradition and history in swimming of wonderful achievements. But for me, and I think for a lot of elite athletes, um, probably mostly speaking to individual athletes though, it's a lot. Well, no, probably both. But for me, it was so much pressure from what I wanted to achieve and what I expected of myself.
Mhm.
And, that compounds with, media and general society. But mostly it was just what I wanted to achieve.
Yeah. Is there ever a tipping point where that becomes too much, where you put too much pressure on yourself and you want too much, or you take it to extremes where it almost hurts your performance, or is
Oh,
all pressure and
absolutely.
all driving a good thing?
Oh God, no, 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 no. That's terrible. I think it's terrible for everybody. If you start to get in that mindset, it's incredibly detrimental to not only performance but to your mental health. And I think that's why, not just in sport but in general life, people burn out. It's because they put too much pressure on themselves, on the things around them, on controlling things, being perfectionists in every way possible. And I certainly was no different to that. And there's been multiple occasions throughout my swimming career where that pressure and expectation that I placed on myself was incredibly detrimental to my performance. I know one of the main ones, not the only one, but probably one of the main ones, was in Athens in 2004. It was my first Olympic Games. And I was 19 years old. It was my second Australian team, but my first Olympics. And I went in as a world record holder into the 100 freestyle. And I don't think I thought it consciously, but now I know that was how I felt. I expected to win because I was the world record holder, and that's what world record holders do.
Mm.
They win, right? And at 19, you're 6 foot tall and bulletproof. You assume you'll be able to execute what you had trained your body to do. But the reality is that the Olympics aren't like that. They're a beast unto themselves. The Olympics. You can't know what that feels like until you're there, until you're soaking in that environment, until you're soaking in that energy and the pressure, expectation mixed with this anticipation of what is about to happen. And, I got swallowed up by that and swallowed up by that pressure that I put on myself to be an Olympic gold medalist, because that's the pinnacle of my sport. That's all that I ever wanted.
Mm.
It wasn't just about making an Australian team for me. It was about being the best in the world. And the Olympics is the best competition there is. And instead of using my training and using that energy, which you can use in a really positive way, it definitely became crushing for me, and ended up swimming a really poor semi-final in the 100 meters freestyle in Athens. And instead of going through to the final, I placed ninth by 0.09 of a second. And
Wow.
Jodie Henry, my fellow Australian teammate, broke the world record in the following semi-final, and then went on to win the Olympic gold medal in the final the next night. So yeah, it's pressure and expectation can be conducive to wonderful things, but it can also very easily flip over to detrimental.
Yeah. How do you then back it up? Because you would have had other events that you had to swim, like with teammates and like relays and other events. How do you back up? I'm going to say what crushing disappointment.
Yes.
Because there would have been, like you said, there's expectations of yourself, but you've also got the media and coaches and whole teams and sponsors who have invested in Libby Trickett. How do you then back that up with another performance?
Well, I mean, it's a good question, Leanne. How do you back that up? It's you kind of, when you're in that high pressure environment and for such a short period of time, you have 8 days of competition, and I was a multi-event swimmer. So you kind of, on some level, have to compartmentalize those experiences and put it in a box to process later. Because in that environment, if you go deep into that crushing disappointment, you're not going to be able to perform in the next event that you're needing to kind of step up into. But and one of my favorite stories to tell was that after that experience in Athens, the exact same experience happened in Beijing 4 years later. So I was world record holder I was world record holder in the 50 and 100 meters freestyle leading into Beijing, actually. And I had won the gold medal in the 100 butterfly, which people probably weren't expecting, but I was hoping for. And I was like, yes, this is going to be my time. Like, I'm just going to win all of these medals and it's going to be the best. Like, it's just going to happen now. Of course, like, you know, I've one gold, so I know how to win gold now.
Yeah. There'll be a ticker tape parade in my honour.
Of course, in my honour.
They'll put me on a stand.
Rainbows will come, just appear in the sky. It'll be wonderful. And again, that's not how the world works. And like I said, I'm a multi-event swimmer, and I try to manage my energy expenditure as much as I could in the races that I was able to do so. So when the 100 freestyle semi-final came along, I pulled back too much in my race, didn't see a girl over in lane 8, and ended up placing 5th in my semi-final rather than first or second. That would have been ideal. And I had this just awful wait for the second semi-final. And once again, 4 years later, after that crushing disappointment, I placed 9th by 0.09 of a second. Like the exact same situation that happened in Athens. And I mean, you can imagine the shame spiral that I went, that I descended into after that race. And I was just reeling for a good 5-10 minutes until I got to the sort of Australian media contingent. Because you have to be interviewed after something like that, of course.
And when you're a puffing, sweaty, wet mess as well.
Yes.
Let's put a microphone in your face.
Yes, that sounds great. And yeah, I got there, and the Australian media liaison, came up to me and said that you're in the final. Like, you've made it. And I, was very upset. And I was like, why would you tell me that? That's awful. But it turned out that one of the Chinese swimmers got disqualified in her semi-final, and I had made it through in lane 8. And so you go from this crushing disappointment to this amazing opportunity. And unless you're able to focus your energy and have kindness and empathy for yourself for making a mistake, but understanding that you have this opportunity to, do what you wanted to do, I just wasn't able to put that together. The following day, I spent way too much time thinking about the wrong things and using my energy for bad rather than good. And I wasn't able to go back to my process-driven steps that I had kind of worked really hard to create. And I put together literally the worst execution
No.
of my 100 meters freestyle that I had ever done in possibly my entire life, at, on the world stage, that once in a 4-year opportunity to, put together the race that you have worked towards and dreamt about. And I came second by 0.04 of a second. So, so you can understand, again, like, stoked that I got through to the final, many years later, stoked that I got the silver medal, but at the time it was just crushing. And then I had the 50 freestyle to come. And usually that was one of my favorite events to race, because it was usually a celebration of the meet that was. And it's 50 meters. It doesn't really hurt that much.
It's over in 20 seconds.
It's over in 23 seconds, and you are able to just put your head down and go. And it played to all of my strengths as an athlete. The start and finish execution was my skill set, basically. Yeah. So, and then I ended up walking away with 4th, which second was hard, but 4th was worse. That really hurt. I still haven't watched that race, actually, because I don't think I can. I probably could, but there's so much emotion still that I feel when I think about that race. So, and then I had 15 minutes. I had the men's 1500 meters freestyle to get my head right and refocus. And the way that I have learned now, and I know that is so important, is by asking for help. Yes. And that's where I just really believe that empathy comes in. And all of the girls in the team, so that was Lisa Jones, Emily Seabohm, and Jessica Schipper, had all had a roller coaster ride of an Olympics. So we felt that, we understood each other, we were in each other's positions, like we got it. And they just literally and metaphorically wrapped their arms around me, and we were able to come together as a team. And even though I didn't even get to have a swim down, we were able to execute this race where
the relay race,
the 4x1 medley relay. Okay. And we were able to execute this race together. And the only way we were able to do that was as a team. Any one of us by ourselves would not have been able to do something like that. But together we were strong, and we were able to all do personal best relay splits and walk away with a gold medal and a world record. So, that's
amazing.
That's my favorite story. Like, it's so funny, because so many years of being an elite athlete and being an individual athlete, it's so much about your individual performance and winning an individual gold medal. But my favorite stories now are that of the relays, and getting to share those experiences with 3 amazing, strong Australian women who have worked their ass off to get to that point and come together and achieve it. It's pretty special.
So you've just talked about the value of team in a relay race, which makes perfect sense, because you all need to work together and G each other up and get the best out of each other. And you've talked about the value of support and asking for help, and realizing that the people around you are in the same boat, and that actually giving you strength and power. When it's between competitions, what's the sense of team like then? Like, how do you, because you would think in my eye from the public is you're all working against each other. It would feel very competitive.
A really good question. And I think it's really hard to, in that environment, have deep friendships. Does that make sense? So, like, those you have. I loved racing those women. Like, I loved racing them. They were incredible athletes. I love what that meant for my performance, because I was really lucky when I was swimming that we had the best girls in the world in my events, literally the best girls in the world. So, like, in 2005, I missed an individual spot for the 100 freestyle because Alice Mills, Jodie Henry, and myself were the top 3 women in the world. We were the fastest 3 in the world. And I missed out because I came third at nationals that year. So even though I was third in the world, I wasn't going to compete at the World Championships. And I knew for my sport, for my swimming, that was going to make me even better, because I was going to work hard just to make the Australian team. And if I made the Australian team, that meant that I was going to be extraordinarily competitive over at the Olympics or World Championships or Commonwealth Games or whatever it was going to be. But having said that, there's so many politics, there's so many things, things at play, that it's really difficult to feel like you can connect super closely to those people that you are essentially trying to beat. And especially with Jodie and Alice, who were training in a squad with a coach that was competitive with my coach. They had an interesting relationship as well, and it felt like we couldn't really connect. As much as we had fun in the marshalling room, as much as I really respected those athletes and those women, I didn't feel like I could just have a text conversation or call up and go for a coffee. But now, what I'm finding fascinating as a 36-year-old woman, and very far past my swimming career, I'm so close to those girls. I'm so close to them as people, because not only did we have that respect in the pool, because we were all trying to achieve these goals, but not many people have those experiences, and we have that connection and understanding and the pressure and the commitment to training. And they're some of my favorite people to hang out with and some of my great friends, and I'm so grateful for those relationships now. But it's so funny, at the time it's hard to go deep, because you are essentially trying to beat one another.
And is it also difficult to, I guess, celebrate them while being sad for yourself, or be celebrating yourself and being sad for them? Like, how do you hold those two at the same time, or do you not pay attention to what other people are doing?
It's not easy. I know in 2004, I desperately didn't want to go and watch the 100 freestyle final. After missing the final and Jodie breaking the world record, and just I felt like I knew that she was going to win, and I wasn't angry at her, because how can you be angry at that? Like, she's just done an incredible performance. But I'm angry at myself for not giving myself the opportunity to be there, because I didn't think I was going to win, but I knew that I possibly could have medalled. I felt like I could have medalled that year, but I got overwhelmed. So it's having enough self-awareness that, as hard as it was going to be to go and watch that final, I needed to go and watch that, for one, to support my teammate, which I think is just the basic amount of respect that you can have and do, even though you might be incredibly disappointed personally that if she didn't turn up, if I'd made the final and she didn't, if the roles were reversed, that would have been incredibly disappointing for me. So I just thought that was the basic amount of respect that I needed to show. But it's amazing, particularly the following year when I missed out on that individual spot for the World Champs. I was so happy for Alice. Obviously I was happy for Jodie, but she had kind of been behind us for a number of years and hadn't had the opportunity to swim an individual spot for a couple of years. And she works her ass off. She was just one of the hardest trainers I'd ever come across, from the moment that I met her all the way through. And I was so you can have both of those experiences. You can be incredibly happy for someone and incredibly disappointed for yourself. And it's understanding how to manage those emotions at the same time.
So then what's the role of your support networks around you? So you've got, from the surface we see coaches, but who else is in your world really adding positivity or support, who's in your inner circle?
Well, obviously, friends and family, they're really important. Almost more, not more important. That's not correct, but like on some level, in terms of keeping us grounded and
Yeah.
keeping us, you know, as sane human beings, friends and family are so important. And I was really lucky that my boyfriend at the time and now husband was also a swimmer. So
Yeah.
we were training together for many years. He got the commitment, he got the hard work. He wasn't someone who was wanting to go and party on weekends. And so I was happy to, I don't know, we watched so much of the OC during our training together, just random stuff like that. He was working towards his goal as an athlete as well. So that was really helpful. But, outside of that, there's so many people that go into it. There's physios and massage therapists and sports scientists and sports psychologists, just the list goes on, and obviously coaches and all of that sort of stuff. But it's just all of those people play such an integral role. Nutritionists, everyone, like they all come together and are working towards what you want to achieve. So it's a funny environment because it's not real life. That's not how the world works. But it's wonderful to have a team behind you who are all working together to achieve these goals.
Yeah. And who believe in you. And I guess the friends and family would almost ground you, like you said, from it not being all about you, because by the sound of it, that could get, I'm going to say, addictive, of having it all about you all the
Oh
time. I
yeah,
mean, sounds
even though they
lovely.
were very very grounding for me, there's still a sense of that. That's why moving into parenthood was so hard because it's not all
Yeah.
about you anymore. You have a
Yeah.
squishy little being yelling at you, telling you what to do and when to do it. So that was really
Mm.
a really difficult transition for me to make. But and it's not always super smooth, as most relationships aren't. I remember in my first year after school, I had a massive argument with my closest girlfriends because they didn't know what I was doing. All they knew is that I was no longer spending time with them and I didn't have time to spend with them because I was training all the time.
Yeah.
And, that was a really difficult thing for us to navigate as a friendship because you'd gone from being at school every day, seeing each other every single day, to hardly seeing them
Mhm.
even once a month because I was so tired all of the time. So yeah, and you kind of have to navigate those conversations, and until they started to see what I was achieving, it's hard for them to understand what I was working towards because all they could
Yeah.
see was that I wasn't spending time with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've talked about expectations of self, we've talked about family,
Mm,
we've talked about team, we've talked about your family and friends, your support networks, and that
mm,
all sounds very, very supportive and almost manageable and almost under your control. Like, you
mm,
know where people stand, you know your team's behind you. What is the implications then when you throw in to the mix press, public? So
mm,
after you've, let's say, come second in that race and you are feeling crushing, but you're okay with it in a sense. But then you've
mm,
got the media coming in, and you've got the media's expectations and their interpretation,
mm,
and by the sound of it, a lack of empathy from their perspective. They're not going, "Poor Libby, she had a bad day." She's like,
mm,
"Let the country down." Like, is
mm.
what's that?
Well, I feel like it's been an interesting shift that's been happening because I, on some level, there's so much pressure and expectation from the media because they like to put flashy headlines up. And I remember going into the 2006 Commonwealth Games and they were like, Trickett, or I was Lenton at the time, Lenton's potential to win 7 gold medals at the Commonwealth Games. And I was like, I haven't even competed in some of these events on an international stage yet. Like, how am I now expected to win gold in all of them? It feels like a lot. And then on the first night of competition in Melbourne in 2006, I got silver in the 200 freestyle, which I was stoked with because that was my first time racing that on the world stage. So I was actually really happy with that performance. But by their expectations, on day one of competition, I'd failed. So in some ways, I actually think that was a good experience because I learnt a couple of things. I learned that you can't take on other people's expectations as your own. You have to simply work with the people around you, know yourself, know what you're trying to achieve. And that's all you can go with, because people have no idea what you've been doing. They have no idea what's been going on in the training pool. Like, for all they know, I could have been injured for 6 months and not trained at all, or, been really sick in the last 6 weeks leading into competition, or whatever it might be. They just assume that you've trained the house down and you are ready to go and you're not nervous at all, and there's none of this context or texture to your experience as a person and as an athlete and as a human being, let alone everybody else's experiences as athletes and human beings as well. So that was a really good experience and understanding of myself in that situation. But also, if the worst was to happen, which it did, I got silver, so I was not able to win 7 gold medals at that particular meet. And that's okay too. If you disappoint people, you're not going to perish. It's not going to be the worst thing in the world. It's still hard because as an athlete and as a person who wants to perform at the highest level all of the time, that internal dialogue can be incredibly crushing if you don't reach your expectations. But, you don't tend to take on what other people say, with as much emphasis as what you do your own internal dialogue.
Yeah, gotcha. So what sort of things would you like the public to know about professional athletes? How can we better understand we've talked a lot about helping us to understand, but how can we better support our professional athletes? Because we have such high expectations. And how can the general public, what do you want them to know?
Well, that's a really interesting question, actually. I don't think it's bad to have expectations, because the thing is, as athletes, we have our own expectations. I think that it probably makes a lot of sense. Like, that just happens, but it's different from having an expectation, and if they don't reach that, then being disappointed in them. It's supporting them in those expectations. It's supporting in reaching those goals. And if they don't reach what they've done, I think the majority of people would be really kind and understanding and encouraging and wrap their arms around people. It's more the media that need to report it, probably in a slightly nicer way, and understand that, I think, to put it in, like, for swimming, for example, my race, you get 53 or less seconds every 4 years to achieve your goal, your lifelong goal that you may have been working towards for 1 year, 4 years, 10 years, your entire life. You might have worked your entire life towards this one opportunity. And if you don't get it, if you don't reach that goal, no one is going to be harder on us than ourselves.
Yeah.
And so people don't need to pile on, I guess. Not that I feel like that shift is starting to happen, because I think in 2012, people saw the way that Emily Seebohm, she got silver in the 100 backstroke, and she bawled her eyes out and was so disappointed and was so worried about letting people down. Like, no one is harder on ourselves than us.
Yeah.
So if we can support people, athletes, through those huge, lofty goals that we have set for ourselves, and that we want to represent our country in the best way that we can and achieve things for ourselves and our team and our country as much as we can. If we can just support everyone in that way, then that's wonderful. But I think more importantly than that, supporting athletes through transition into the real world, because that's the real challenge in life. I mean, sport is wonderful, but at the end of the day, it's a game, and we're so privileged to be able to do something like that day in and day out. So it's mostly making that transition into the real world that I think needs the most support for a lot of athletes.
Yeah, awesome. I think it's also that humanity. And I think
Yes.
that's what I'm trying to do with the podcast, is bring that humanity to different professions and different experiences, so that we can see the human first and the role or the experience second.
And I think that's exactly right. And I think everybody experiences challenges and obstacles and disappointments and setbacks and just heartbreaking situations in every facet of their lives, regardless of what you do or how you do it. And if we can connect on that human level, then you're going to be more respectful, you're going to be more understanding, you're going to be just generally kinder to people. And I think that's how we it sounds really lame, but make the world a better place. Let's make the world a better place by showing human connection, and that we're all humans, and that most of us are just trying to do our best most of the time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for today. How are you now? Are you good? Are you well? You're enjoying motherhood?
I am. I'm great. I feel like I'm on the path that I'm meant to be on, which I haven't felt like that for 8 years since retiring from swimming. And, my girls are great. They're complete balls of craziness, but, it's such a joy to see them grow and develop their personalities. I really enjoy that. They're pretty stubborn little things. I don't know where they get that from.
No idea.
No idea. But they're quirky and they're funny, and they're a joy to watch grow up. So.
Oh, lovely. So if people want to find you now, I'm going to do the whole talk show thing. Go, Libby has a book. Libby has a book, and if you'd like to find it, it's called Beneath the Surface, and it's at a online bookstore near you. I don't know how to do that.
Best way to do it is find it online, I think. I mean, if you can go to your local bookshop and get them to order it or get it in, or it might be in there. I don't know. I should know this better. I should do a better job of that. But definitely online, you can find it.
Go Google Libby Trickett, Beneath the Surface. Read her book. It is a beautiful read.
Thank you.
And if people want to find you, you are the queen of hashtags on Instagram. What is your Instagram handle if people want to find you?
It's at Libby_Trickett.
Lovely. Libby, you are a pure delight. Thank you so much for your time today. I wish you every happiness and success.
No, you're so kind. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Libby. What a beautiful discussion, and I'm so glad you're doing well now. I really learned a lot. I have to say that being a professional athlete is not something I've ever had to think about, but really taking into account the value of empathy for yourself, for those around you, and from those around you in getting to the top of your field is really, really important. If you'd like to learn more, you can contact me at empathyfirst.com.au or find me on social media, EmpathyFirstHQ. And if you'd like to find Libby on Instagram, she's at Libby_Trickett. And her book is called Beneath the Surface, which you can find at a bookstore near you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time for the Empathy Podcast.